Everything we know, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Simulationist podcast. This is the 208th iteration of the show, recorded on the 1st of September 2016.
Just by a matter of minutes, but yeah.
Yeah, it's after midnight, so it was the 31st, now it's the 1st, because we're doing a late night. Late night with Josh and Ryan. Speaking of which, that over there, that other voice you heard just a second ago.
Co-host extraordinaire is Ryan Kirkby.
That's Ryan Kirkby. And I am Josh Trelevin.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Or are you welcoming the people?
I'm welcoming our wonderful listening viewers.
We're in Ryan's apartment, as we pretty much always are. So technically, yes, he's welcoming me into his home.
I'm welcoming all of you into my home.
Yeah, join us in the living room. Two nerdy guys who like to talk about simulations and video games.
To be fair, there's a rampageous girl going about an awful lot, but she's down for the night.
Well, we're talking about your daughter. Yes, we've heard her voice in the podcast before, so people will have heard
No
her.
reviews for her this week.
Okay, yeah, it's a little past your bedtime.
Well,
we could get her up.
We didn't watch a movie either this week.
But where does she have to be in the morning?
Daycare.
Oh, okay.
By a decent hour.
Yeah. Well, what should we talk about?
Well, I got a bit of a news story this week. No, usually our news stories are fiction-related, but I find this
one... We often kind of skirt the edge of fiction-related.
I find this one segs nicely into fiction. So there's a farmer in the Philippines. Not, like our terrestrial farmers, that we have here in Canada. This is like one of those oyster fisher farmermen, like the divers and all that.
Oyster diver? Okay, pearl diver? That's a thing. Yeah.
Oyster diver, pearl diver. He's an aquatic farmer, is basically what I'm saying.
I'm just picturing, the coveralls and straw in his mouth and the straw hat, too. And then he's, jumping in the water.
Well, in the case, you replace the overalls, with a wetsuit and the straw with, some scuba stuff.
Okay.
And, But apparently, it has come out that he was in possession, until recently, of the world's largest pearl. It's something like 34 pounds.
Cool.
Now, this isn't a pearl like a spherical pearl that you'd see on necklaces and all that. This thing looks more like the tooth from some horrible giant rhinoceros.
So it's basically like an oyster's tumor.
Yeah.
I guess that's what pearls are, aren't they?
Well, it's a bit of grit, that's encased with layers of, no, it doesn't hurt so bad, and just keeps on forming up. So it's kind of like plaque. That's a good way of looking at it. Very valuable plaque.
Yeah.
Now, he gave it to a relative when he was moving, sort of things like, I can't keep this, I'm moving. And she was the one who brought it to the world's attention about, hey, this is the heaviest pearl on Earth, maybe the biggest pearl. Still got to get properly verified, both dimensions and whatnot stuff. And they're not even certain, where they're going to wind up putting this thing, museum, put it in a lobby hotel of, sort of thing of a local hotel.
A fancy hotel, yeah.
And just to get people to come on, it's like a tourist attraction, right?
Sure, yeah.
Some places have the world's largest ball of twine. This have the largest pearl on Earth. It may wind up being valued at several $1 million.
Okay, yeah.
Like $3-4 million, depending on, the buyer's market, seller's market, and all that fun stuff. But the best part about the story is where the farmer has had it. It wasn't that he just found it and then gave it off to a relative. He's had this thing for a decade. He kept it under his bed.
So like a $34 million artifact?
Multi-million-dollar, item.
If it's a natural thing like a fossil, I guess that's not an artifact, because artifact
more towards relic,
human
I suppose.
Construction.
Yeah.
A relic could work, yeah. All right.
A wonder of the world, the largest natural... Yeah.
Gem, I guess?
Sometimes
in the DMG, pearls are listed under gems, but I guess it's
like a non-gem sort of thing. It's in the same category, but through, biological means.
Here's
Biogem? Can we call it that?
Oh, biological? There's probably a word for it.
Yeah. I like biogem. It sounds better.
I remember when somebody caught like a game-winning baseball that ended up being worth $1 million or something like that.
Like so-and-so's like 50th home run of the season. Oh, caught.
Yeah, or a World Series or something like that.
Yeah.
Somebody, a fan caught that baseball. And what happened after that, though, was the IRS, this was in the United States, so they had the IRS, came to the person who caught this ball, and they said, this person wanted to keep it, I guess, or I don't know. Yeah. But the IRS said, basically, you're going to have to pay us $500,000 just to keep that ball, because that's the same as they considered it a gambling winning or something like that, a windfall.
Well, it's like the people that wind up winning those houses in like the little house lotteries you see at like fairs and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it costs a lot to keep because they're big old fancy houses, and then you got to pay property taxes on them. So it winds up being that most people actually keep the house for 1 year because you can't sell it before then.
You're not allowed. Okay.
Contractual obligations and all that, and then thereafter you sell it. So you keep this magnificent house for a year, and then you sell it and hopefully turn a decent profit off it.
Yeah.
Like we're speaking from Victoria here, so it's like there's no way you're not going to turn a profit off selling a house. The market's just that hot.
I guess in that first year or two, you can probably get a mortgage from the bank for to hang on to it
just
for a year.
Just take out a small loan, I suppose, sort of thing.
Because you have the house as collateral.
Yeah.
But after that, you have to kind of
sell it. Yeah. Hopefully at a lot more money than what the mortgage was on that.
Yeah, I don't even know what the laws are in Canada. I don't think it's as extreme.
No,
as
actually, my dad did have a friend who won the fancy house from the Calgary Stampede, and that's exactly what he did. Was lived in it for 1 year before being able to sell it, and then sold it for a profit.
Oh, okay.
Because it was just beyond his means. Like, dude was a carpenter.
Yeah. So, I mean, who knows what the Philippines have for laws for how much, does the government take a chunk of it? Or?
Well, like, when would they take a chunk out of it? 10 years ago? The guy's this is not a new windfall for him. It's just something he's got and had.
Well, maybe maybe owes the government that money and plus interest.
He could have just mailed it to wherever the heck he wanted. No one would have known any better.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's like an incentive to keep it quiet. Yeah, it's weird.
That's the thing is it wasn't even for him like an incentive. It's just like, ooh, this looks pretty. I guess I'll keep it, But I don't got a lot of space here. I'll have to keep it under the bed.
Yeah.
But if I was to make up a story and say that somebody had the world's largest pearl, he's had it for 10 years, he kept it underneath the bed, you would deride me for having a very bad sense of storytelling.
Well, actually,
it does not seem realistic. It's like, why would he keep it? Like, this is a huge pearl. Why would he not, find something? Like, there's even a story, out there. I think they make all Canadian kids read about, some pearl divers. I believe off the coast of South America, the western coast. I can't remember.
Chile or
I think it's either Chile
Peru,
or Peru,
Ecuador.
And they wind up getting like a huge pearl, and it winds up ruining their lives.
Oh yeah.
People want it, sort of thing, and like, I don't have the means to keep it, so we got to leave, run all that.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if I found a really valuable thing in a third world country, and I just lived there, like, if I'm a Canadian, I might try and sneak it back to Canada, or whatever. But in third world country, you actually have to kind of worry because there might be organized crime or something like that, and basically,
this is apparently one of the better parts of the Philippines, where you don't have to worry so much about that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Although 10 years ago, I don't know what life might have been a little different. I don't know how it is.
But as I was describing for you, though, it's like if I was to make up a story and say all that sort of stuff, if like I was to run like a D&D campaign and someone was to, like a little NPC villager was to have a scroll of true resurrection, and like someone was to ask, where the heck did this little like first level NPC nobody get this from? And I say, well, he's found it, while he was doing his work, and he's had it for like 10 years now. That would be grounds for a very big accusation of like, this is horrible storytelling. You're a horrible storyteller. You don't tell realistic stories. And yet, it's a very good like parallel to exactly what has actually happened.
Well, it brings to my mind the ring from the Lord of the Rings. Like the ring
stays hidden when it needs to be hidden, and now that it wants to be known, it makes itself known.
I guess, yeah, and that's part of like how, because it would have been a weird thing if the ring, he didn't have its own volition, it was just a very, very valuable ring, like a symbol or whatever. Then it would be like you said, it would be a rotten story because the ring would just sort of show up in odd places for like coincidentally. and like be in on a hobbit's mantelpiece for 50 years or however long Bilbo had it. He had it a
decently
decades?
long time. Well,
yeah.
he was able to have it a long time. It's kind of one of the powers of the ring.
Yeah, so this relatively like low-level hobbit aristocrat has it just, it's just one of my knickknacks.
Exactly. And that's the sort of thing is like without it being told, like it's hidden away, like Gandalf made sure that it stayed hidden. That's where, like the forces of Sauron weren't looking, like sort of thing.
Yeah.
The forces of Sauron aren't looking underneath the beds.
Yeah.
Sort of thing of people for these miraculous artifacts that they've been hunting for, was it millennia now?
Since the end of the Third Age.
So if not a proper millennia, then definitely centuries.
No, they're in the Third, since the end of the Second Age, because the end of the Second Age was when they defeated Sauron the first time.
Yeah.
And then the second time was the end of the Third Age.
Well, like every time you knock down Sauron, you might as well end the age and start new, right?
I guess that's how it works, yeah. Because the first one was the fall of Numenor, I think. I don't remember exactly. Our Tolkien fan listeners are probably more aware.
It's not like that at all. But that's the thing, though, is just like these sorts of unrealistic storytelling. Like, how could the most powerful, ring, like effective artifact in the Middle Earth, just go unnoticed on a hobbit's mantelpiece for decades? How could a fisherman in the Philippines keep, like the world's largest pearl under his bed for a decade?
Yeah. I think Tolkien also at some point, or maybe somebody else, made a little joke or a reference of like somebody got it in their head that, hobbits always have magic rings, or, just look on, find a random hobbit and hobbit peasant, shake him upside down, he's bound to have an artifact of some kind on him. I think D&D actually has this happen.
They've had it with Kender in the Dragonlance setting, because they have a habit of picking up stuff and not even paying attention to what they're doing.
Yeah.
But that's a racial kleptomania for you. As well as a running in joke.
I feel like it might have happened in Knights of the Dinner Table, too.
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah.
They're like, he's a peasant, he's bound to have an artifact.
Well, mind you, with Knights of the Dinner Table, like picking up a halfling and shaking them until all the loot drops out is, a fairly common tactic for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Their motivation is almost, like tangential to their actions. But yes, I just wanted to put it out there. It's like this is something that actually has happened, and yet would be considered unrealistic, poor storytelling if you were to make up something analogous to it in almost any campaign setting.
Yeah, and also probably what I would do as a storyteller is I would probably have to hang a lantern on it. I would have to sort of break the fourth wall a little bit and say, yes, I realize this sounds implausible. Say something like, have a character note that, what, that's crazy, that's implausible, or, hang it.
The odds of this happening are statistically improbable.
Yeah, you can say, something like that.
How'd they put it in Futurama? This is by a wide margin the least likely thing to have ever occurred.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that one. It's very well worded. But that's the thing. It's like sometimes reality is unrealistic too, and so sometimes you have to remind people of that. Just how it goes.
Yeah.
Sometimes the fantastic does happen. It's not just a trope of some styles of storytelling.
And also, generally, you want to put those kind of, I guess, coincidences and reveals earlier in the story if you can, because you don't, unless you have hinted, you don't want to have something land on people in the final chapter of the book. And it's like, he had it was under the peasant's thing the whole time.
What a MacGuffin, or no, sorry, not MacGuffin, what a Deus Ex Machina that was, how could that possibly have happened?
Yeah, so, and that's also good storytelling, because in theory, if you know a story already and you're telling a story that theoretically happened, you're telling it as if it actually happened, the ending already, and all the pieces that fit in together, and there's going to be a big reveal coming up. You don't want to just because it's going to be an important keystone of this is what storytelling does, is puts the really exciting, big, powerful pieces in central locations of your story. So if you have that, very valuable thing being discovered, you want to put that in important, either early in your story or as a very, what am I trying to say? Yeah, it's got to be
properly placed, very intricately, almost like one of those like Zen rock gardens. Everything in its proper place and order.
That's right.
If done right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just like I had a hard time reading the news story on the whole thing though, for the Pearl, because it just seemed almost like some sort of crazy, like made up, like like slow news day. Got to fill up the space somehow.
Were you like jealous? Like, where's my Pearl?
I married her. Oh.
You probably immediately going to. I don't think you could get $34 million for her.
Hey, I'm not going to sell her for that little. But what's the thing is that like I suppose he just didn't realize the value of what he had, which might be an interesting trope. Is that it turns out the stuff you've had in your back pocket since like the beginning of like chapter 1 is actually a valuable item.
Yeah, I mean there are people in a good percentage of the world who are. I mean, they're born into relative poverty. I mean, they obviously he's a farmer, so he has a way to make a living, and so on and so forth. But often, like, there's a lot of people in the world who are just basically content.
We're the world's largest, like Pearl would not mean much to them.
Yeah, because they just want to live their life. They just want to do the thing that they do from day to day. Whereas, like, I feel like, and I, I don't mind admitting that I have this, like, greed, and, like, I want to get ahead, and I want to earn, like, a lot of money, and, as much as possible. I'm not content to just do the same thing over and over and over again and just
fair enough.
Life. But I think there's something, admirable about that. I mean, in Tolkien stories, like, that's the people that he sort of praises, or the hobbits who just want to live simply.
Yeah, I suppose. But then again, come the Fourth Age, Aragorn does kind of like unite and civilize like all the lands.
Yeah.
Until his death, he basically just goes around, saying, you're part of my empire now, and everyone just kind of goes, yay, okay. Or if they're, like a goblin or orc, then he kills them all, then yay.
Interesting. Well, yeah, there might be more to that story than we sort of thought, but yeah.
But yeah, so there's something to be said about, like, hey, let's reunite a great empire all together. Except for those guys from the south, like the Númenóreans. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes them. Nobody ever wants them and all that. Ugh. They can have their horrible queens with their crazy cats.
Oh, from the south?
Yeah.
The Haradrim? Or is it? That's from the east. Those are Easterlings.
Yeah. No, it'd be the black Númenóreans, which are problematic because they're the only black people shown, and they're like evil.
Yeah.
Mind you, of course, in the greater context of the Lord of the Rings series, if it wasn't part of like the Middle Earth that we see, it was all effectively ruled by Sauron. So like that one area was the only area that wasn't under his sway and fairly evil. And of course, that's where he manages to lose the ring. It's like, way to go, buddy. If you had lost it in any other direction but west of Mordor, it'd have been fine.
Well, let me see. How did he lose the ring? Isildur took it. So basically, the armies of the West marched into Mordor and in his heart and took.
Yeah, but if he had just like kind of like skipped back east and then just had like the entire 2/3 of the continent take 2 steps west, then there was no way they could have gotten the ring. Once power cemented, crushes through brute force, takes over the entire land. There is no other age.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It turns out he's a great artificer. Pretty charismatic dude when he has his full body about him and he's not, being like horribly evil. Not a good tactician. Yeah. I mean, that's why he leaves Mount Doom bare, like when all the forces, like head out to do other stuff. Like, hey, this is the one area that might melt the one thing that, is keeping me around, and is the source of my power. Let's leave it unguarded. Not a good tactician.
Well, I mean, good conventionally, I think, like...
I would have put 7 gates. You know those big gates that require those giant trolls to open? I would have had 7 of those in the way.
I wouldn't. I think he did what was reasonable to expect. Like that's the whole point of the Hobbit's plan. That it would never, no one would ever try that.
And yet, I still would have put 7 gates up around. Like forget just the gates.
Yeah,
I'd have had walls around Mount Doom. 7 concentric ringed walls around Mount Doom.
Like Gondor.
Kind of. Yeah.
Or what's the capital of Gondor?
Minas Tirith.
Minas Tirith, yes.
Hey, we're actually not that bad with our lore. Yeah. Like seriously, with all that power, for to the south, to the east, and even to the north. I mean, like where the dragons fairly held sway, and all that stuff. Like, he basically ruled everything else. He couldn't have just had say, everybody, could you please come right here, and pointed at say like the middle of the Misty Mountains, and just crushed everything that was opposing them. Maybe.
I wonder. You might be right. You might have a point about him being a bad tactician in that he was kind of overconfident at the battle, at the end of the Second Age when the elves and men joined forces. To be fair, I do recall him swinging that giant flail. Yeah. And just like entire groups of people just go flying out from it. So it's like, yeah, he's kind of like in God mode there. Yeah. So if there's a tactical flaw, it's that he thinks he's overwhelmingly. He wants to see the battlefield in the first person. I guess. I guess he's arrogant, and he wants to be. Because why would? Actually, I don't know if in the books. I don't know if he does. He actually, he does step out onto the battlefield because obviously. How else did he lose the ring? Yeah. Yeah. So he's like I said, bad tactician. That's his biggest flaw. Or he knew the Song of Evil better than Morgoth, the evil god who started the Song of Evil itself. He understood it better. So he was a really well-rounded, excellent character, except in tactics, in which case he probably could have stood, to listen to some other people about that. Yeah. I think on some level, though, I think he was sort of doomed to fail. Doomed to fail. Mount Doomed to fail? Yeah. Not doomed. But do we need to argue about this further? No. This is I think it's a pretty good tangent we've got off on the world's largest. How did we get? Pearl. The pearl. Okay, well that was cool. Yeah. Sometimes reality is not very realistic as we come to accept it. If people accuse you of not writing realistic, of writing too fantastic, well, you kind of shove that in their face. This stuff actually happens. It does. Indeed. I wanted to mention another thing that's coming up. Stranger Things has just been, they've announced that they're going to do a second season. Which is really just a formality, because, the amount of good word coming out on this thing, and the amount of praise, and critics as well as viewers alike. Oh my goodness. If they had not made a second season, it's all done through which I think it's a Netflix series, right? Yes, Netflix. Yeah. All the Netflix executives would have just been strung up, if not burned in effigy. I suppose. My impression of season 1 was yes, there were a few hooks or stuff that they could build a second season off of. But at the same time, I felt like that whole season it felt like a movie, basically, like a 10-hour or whatever movie. To me, it felt it had a beginning, middle, and end, and it was satisfying in the end. But you can't make a good sequel with good, decent characters. Well, and season 2 has to basically start, a new story. Something else has to happen. I'm okay with that. Provided they can keep up what they're doing. Yeah. Oh yeah. Stranger Things. I guess I'm looking forward to that now. Now that I haven't even seen season 1, and I'm looking forward to it. The amount of friends on my Facebook that keep mentioning so good about this stuff, and just I shotgun the entire thing once I started watching it. Now I worry that your expectations might be too high. It's not a perfect series, I'll tell you that. Well, that's the thing. When these days, when it comes to supernatural horror, I just want anything that's actually a little bit scary, actually got some horror, some good suspense in there. I've watched a number of stuff, I watched that Ouija one, and it's just aside from a third act twist that was fairly well documented ahead of time, oh no, I did not see that coming at all. There hasn't been a lot that has
had really gotten me. And, you know, like, oh wow, that was amazing. So like the fact that other people I trust and respect are saying good things about it, you know what, like, hey, that's enough for me. I'll watch it and I'll just enjoy it, knowing that I've got friends and, you know, like, enjoying it. And if I wind up enjoying it myself too, it's like, hey, that's all the better.
All right. Well, cool. So yeah, we got something to look forward to.
Hollywood horror has made me a sad man.
I will like it. If you watch this show, you'll see quite a number of familiar tropes. Like some of the things.
There's nothing wrong. A trope well done is not a bad thing.
So yeah.
It's only the hackneyed tropes that you got to worry about.
Some of it is really fun to, like, you know, it's the way horror movies often are. Fun. It's fun to sort of watch and say, oh, that, you know, that thing, that trope, or whatever.
It's gonna happen. This is gonna. Oh, it happened. I saw it coming.
Yeah. But good acting. That's the other thing you'll get out of this one.
I mean, like, you look at some of the other stuff, like the original Evil Dead. It did not have a huge budget. It did not have, like, the most amazingly unique plot line ever. But what it did have was a lot of zeal behind it, good actors, and a lot of enthusiasm for the product. Mm-hmm. They endured literally what would be considered hell for most people's standards of acting to get that made. And so that says exactly how much they were rooting for this movie. So yes, good acting is like the cornerstone. It's the cornerstone, I suppose, of all movies, but horror... It's, I mean, like, if you're not into it, if you're not, like, sold on the premise, you are not going to get a good performance out of your actors. It's just how it goes.
All right.
Yay, kudos to good acting.
Yes,
the savior of many an otherwise bad film. I remember watching a bad film. This was this is not a B film. This was a C film, except for the villain. Whenever this guy was on the scene, it was a B movie. He upgraded it 1 letter grade.
Right.
And if it would have been a better movie, it would have been like a B movie. You could have probably upgraded it to an A.
Is that what B movie is for? Like, as if you're getting a grade of like a school grade?
It's like a side B sort of thing. It's not good enough to put up a front. So, but it is like all right. So just put it in the back end of the track. This is back when we had cassette tapes with a side A and a side B.
Okay. Well, cassette tapes and records would have a backside on a record.
Yeah, there'd be a side B on the records too. But it's mostly with cassette tapes, you know, during the day for their hits, because you'd want to have the first song that the people listened to as they popped it into their Walkmans. With stuff like, you know, like the big old vinyls, you could kind of put it where you wanted it to be. But when it came to a cassette tape, you kind of had to start at the beginning, and if not fast forward. You know, it was very much more linear than the vinyl was ever.
Sure, okay, but I'm still not clear on how this applies to movies.
In which case, I said, like, this movie was not, you know, even like a B-side movie. This was a C-side movie.
Like, did they shipped movies in pairs with, like, a different movie on the back of the...
Some of them, yes. They'd only...
The film is transparent.
Some movies would only get released when it was paired up with another movie for, like double features.
Yeah. So is that how what B movie means?
It's kind of an allegory for the whole thing. But yeah, there were some movies that were only ever released because they needed to like make a double feature to work with the other ones.
Okay.
So
Well, that sounds plausible to me.
But this one, like the only reason this would ever have seen like a show would be a triple feature. There would just be whatever they put in the back.
Yeah, see.
Yeah.
You have to watch 2 better movies before you finally get to watch this movie.
But the one actor, the villain, man, he was so into it. He was so much more than anyone else, and he was trying so much more that whenever he was in the scene, he upgraded it to the B movie.
Okay, yeah.
It was almost a shame he was even in that, man. He was slumming it. I can't remember the movie or the name of the actor, but I do remember that he was making it so much better every time it was there. It was like, oh yeah. So that's the power of good acting. Just even one person with good acting. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I've also heard that a good editor can actually make an actor really look better.
To be fair, good editing can turn a comedy into a horror. I think many people out there have seen the Mary Poppins as a horror preview.
Okay.
Where they take the story of Mary Poppins, you know, the British nanny who's got magical powers, that helps make life wonderful for a bunch of kids and make sure that they get closer in touch with their father and like a bunch of songs and dances with Dick Van Dyke, who is a wonderful person to listen to sing and watch dance. If you've never seen it, give it a chance just for Dick Van Dyke.
If you've never seen Mary Poppins, there's our recommendation for the week.
Yeah, if you've never seen Mary Poppins, it's pretty good. There's actually some decent bits where they mesh with people and cartoons in a way that didn't really get seen again until Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I remember Bedknobs and Broomsticks had
with
that.
Angela Lansbury. Yes.
Was that before or after?
It was kind of like a also ran next to it. It was never as big as, kind of like how they had like Ants and A Bug's Life at the same time.
Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks
are
about the same.
They're both pretty darn good.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang have a cartoon part too?
Just the one scene, I believe.
One scene, okay.
Yeah. Whereas this one worked well, like very much integrated, like song and dance, like working together, in some very good ways that I must say, like only was improved with the use of doing cell animation of like Roger Rabbit over top of like a robot like picking up a drink and shotting it back, so Roger Rabbit could actually pick up a real world drink and drink it.
You know what they need to do?
A sequel? Definitely.
They need to do maybe someone is remind me if you know of an example of this. They needed to do that Toy Story style CG or
CGI,
Monsters Inc. or etc. Pixar style 3D cartoon with real people. Like that Roger Rabbit style only. You know,
I actually saw something thanks to my daughter earlier today on that one.
Okay, was there?
Yes, it was a Jigglypuff playing at a playground. And the Jigglypuff was like CGI sort of thing, and the playground was a real playground.
Okay, so it's been done, but I want to see like a feature of like a
not just
mix.
Like a little sort of quick thing on YouTube. Fine. There's probably something out there, but nothing is popping up into my mind right away. At least nothing that isn't like the Gods of Egypt movie was apparently mostly CGI, and there's a few other movies
Prince
that are
of Egypt.
Gods of Egypt. Sorry, Prince of Egypt was the Disney one.
Okay. Yeah, no, you said it right, but yeah, I'm not familiar with Gods of Egypt.
Oh, it was not considered a good movie, and there's some accusations of whitewashing. There was not very many white people in it.
Oh, that one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, ancient Egypt spans half of human history, so there was some periods where there was some decent amounts of Caucasian people involved. This was not one of those times, however.
Okay.
So yeah, and there are some movies that are very heavily CGI'd, where about the only thing real for a scene would be, say, Robert Downey Jr.'s face. Everything else is like CG or blue screened in. Mm-hmm. So that's just how it goes. But I don't think that qualifies the same way as what you're thinking.
Transformers probably is
a good example of what you're looking for.
Counts, but I mean, maybe I don't want to count.
You're thinking something more on a personal scale instead of a giant robot, more like like a person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe Kevin Smith's yoga hosers, the one with the
scene with the Bratzies.
The Bratzies, yeah, or the Bratzies. I think they're CGI, or are they actors like?
I think they might be actually actors,
Willow style with the miniature eyes.
I was going to think more of, the Army of Darkness, where Ash is fighting all those tiny little mini Ashes.
Oh yeah,
thanks to the broken mirror.
Or what's that movie? The Land of the Little People. Do you remember that one? The guy.
Not really.
I think it's a modern man or better dude who goes and he finds like a land of leprechauns and stuff.
Oh, how nice of him.
Yeah. You haven't seen that one?
No.
That feels like a Ryan Kirkby movie to me.
Try as I might, I cannot watch all movies all the time.
Yeah.
I have to do a lot of reading too. No, for some reason there's a lot of holes in my have I seen this sort of movie.
Yeah,
in which case only people's recommendations can help me fill the void.
There's probably more holes in my watching experience, but I'm interested to know if you watch it, just what you think of that movie.
Oh, I guess we're gonna have to put it on the list, see if the local library's got it.
Yeah, they probably. I don't know if it might be on YouTube. It's one of those it wasn't great, so it might just be.
YouTube's one of the places where it'll be where people just don't care.
They just don't care if it's on there. Yeah. Like riding the bus. I watched Riding the Bus with my sister. And YouTube's nobody's we don't care.
There are some movies that manage to stay up a couple months before someone finally gets around to saying, "Hey, take it down."
Although speaking of riding the bus with my sister, I just want to say I really enjoyed that movie. So
there you go. Just because it wasn't big doesn't mean it's not good.
I mean, most people thought it was bad, but I thought it was good.
It tells a particular story that tickles your fancy.
Pretty much.
There you go. But yes, we're getting off on tangents there again.
More tangents.
Okay. So yeah, long story short, good actors. Thank you for season 2 coming up for Stranger Things.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Should we talk about what we've been up to?
Yeah. What you been doing this week, Josh?
Well, not a lot. I've been working a lot, but in between work and also moving rooms at my parents' house, but that's not important.
Moving on up.
Moving lateral, kind of, sort of down, but in the future, anyway, I'll probably end up with a better place in the next couple months. So,
congratulations!
So we'll see how that goes. Not that our listeners care that much.
Well, I mean, maybe. It's always nice to know that the people who you're listening to aren't going to in danger of going, homeless and couch surfing in the next 2 months.
Yeah, I was, on the edge of that, but I don't have to worry about that at least for now.
Hooray!
Patreon.com.
People from getting homeless. I'm doing well myself. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. We're both working in the service industry, so yes.
It gets me free food with every shift. And all the extra hours that negligent people will let me take.
Yeah. Well, that's if you work there and if you're reliable, I don't know why.
Yeah, reliability is a very big thing in a lot of fields, and that's something that not a lot of people decide to market as being their thing.
Well,
so if you want to put an edge in your resume, make sure to note that you're a reliable person. Unless you're not, in which case you're a liar. You're a liable person.
I mean, I've never really known how to represent that on a resume, just to say, oh yeah, I'm reliable. I could be not reliable, and if I wasn't, that's something a not reliable person would say, isn't it?
Well, it's a good thing to market it, in the job market.
I guess show that
every advantage you think you have, even if it's a minor one, is something you want to put out there.
Yeah, I suppose.
You got to lay this stuff all on the table, man. There's other people begging for those jobs.
Well, yes. Okay, so that tangent, real-world weird tangent out of the way, I did manage to get in a little bit of Dwarf Fortress. I killed a giant snail creature with wings. I think it had wings.
Oh, so it was like one of those... Was it like a Titan, or was it a Forgotten Beast?
Forgotten Beast.
Oh, very nice. I must admit... There is a long-running stance of trying to get people to illustrate the Forgotten Beasts.
Oh, yeah.
With some very good artists. Look up, I think it's Deeper Dark. Mm-hmm. It's oh my goodness, the artwork this guy does is just magnificent. And he can really tell a story with one image.
Yeah. So I have an underground drawbridge, in the caverns. I built a staircase all the way down into the caverns. And then there's a sort of an entrance room with a drawbridge, and then so that's how you get into the caverns. And I was thinking that would keep me safe for the most part, but then I saw that it had wings.
That and drawbridges, smashing it or trying to lift up and make it fling away, doesn't actually work against creatures of a certain size or larger.
Okay.
Of which I believe Forgotten Beasts and other horrible fell creatures are by default always too big for that to work with.
Okay.
So yeah, if that's the thing, if it's just a retracting drawbridge, it's not going to work against flyers. But the ones that'll retract and crush down. Mm-hmm. Those won't work against certain creatures. Okay.
Well, I wasn't trying to crush it, although that would have been something to try. I was basically wanted to seal the caverns off. But then I was like, it's probably going to be able to fly over that because it's got wings. But fortunately, it was noxious. It had a noxious thing. But
noxious gases?
Yeah, it's something like that. But it didn't seem to do much damage to my dwarves.
It happens. The gases and all that stuff that it will have are randomly generated. Mm-hmm. I'm on a map where I got heinous dust blowing in all over the place. Hasn't done a single thing to any one of my dwarves or any animal out there.
Oh, yeah. So it's just kind of gross.
It may have a syndrome attached to it, but not one that is inhaled or contact.
Okay.
So, like, they'd have to eat it, or they'd have to, like, maybe get it in a wound or something like that for it to happen. Or it might affect, like just the internal organs. So as long as my dwarves have skin, no worries.
Okay. That reminds me, though, I had another forgotten beast come into my fortress, and it was a fire-breathing giant, I think it was a turtle of some kind.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, and the thing about...
Please tell me it had a name like Gamora or Godzilla or something.
Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it. I think it had a cool name like that, but...
Oh, okay.
The snail was called Smursk.
Smursk.
Or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a pretty good name. But this, the fire-breathing creature, this is what I learned in Dwarf Fortress, is that fire is not your computer's friend.
Oh, yes. The frames per second will just absolutely kill.
Yeah.
Like, it breathes fire on your FPS rating, and, like, until everything's gone out. Oof.
Yeah. But I did discover that you can basically save your game and re-enter, and that will actually improve it a little bit. But then it gradually kind of slows down again.
Yeah, any pausing should work for that too.
Okay.
So just like putting yourself to the should I save or like the abandoned fortress, that should get the frame rate up there at least for a little bit.
And the other problem I discovered with fire-breathing creatures is they generate smoke as well as fire, and then your dwarves can't path through the smoke.
Because they can't see the other side. It's a fog of war, effectively, yeah.
Yeah, so they don't.
They are also unwilling to walk through flames, too. So there's also issues with that.
And I had the creature lit a couple of my dwarves on fire, too.
If it makes you feel better, there was previous editions where that was considered a tactic for making your dwarves skinny.
No.
Fire was not hot enough to burn anything really, but it would melt fat.
Mm-hmm.
So your dwarves would just like walk through a fire and then they'd all come out lean and skinny.
Oh.
Yeah. There's been some weird things throughout that. Like I remember one edition where if you went outside in a scorching hot biome, the temperature would be higher than that of the melting point of fat. So your dwarves would just walk out and they'd start boiling alive in their own fat.
Wow.
That got fixed pretty quickly. It was considered like game breaking and not in the fun way that tends to happen.
Yeah. All right. So that's that's about all I did in simulations, but I had fun.
Yeah, I remember like I got attacked by a minotaur this week by the name of Rubsit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just how like the name just translates out. Rubsit. So it's either Rubsit or Rubs it.
Yeah.
Like this minotaur rubs it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's rubbing, and I don't know, I captured it alive. Woo.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. I got saddened after having to kill my giant.
So you have a minotaur captured. Have you considered?
It's actually a caged guest, according to the roster right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I am considering, putting a nice little labyrinth for it. I'm also going to see like whether or not I'll be able to make weapons in different sizes and maybe make like some weapons and armor for my minotaur to make it really dangerous. And then should I ever get creatures like I just don't need, I'll drop them in and let the minotaur hunt them down.
Nice.
Have fun with it, that sort of thing. It may prove to be the Minotaur's undoing, however, because where I'm going to be putting everything down is quite likely going to wind up being a spot where the dead will animate. So the Minotaur would kill the thing, then the zombie would come up and he'd have to keep hacking away at it. Or she. I can't remember if my Minotaur's a boy or a girl.
Okay.
I'm starting to get tired of artifact creation.
Okay.
Because I'm quarrying out the glacier to make a wonderful, like a wall around my perimeter. I'm getting a lot of artifacts, like starting up. The game generates, artifacts based on like a formula, and one of the major contributors to the formula is how many blocks have been dug out.
Oh, I see.
So because I've dug out half the map for about 4 levels, and then I've completely cleared out another subterranean level, I need a lot of platinum for reasons.
Okay.
I have it seems like once every 2 to 3 seasons I'm popping up another artifact, and most of them are useless. Like the last one I created was a really awesome cup. Not even like a proper mug. It was just like literally a wooden cup with all these like awesome things like on it.
That's my favorite thing to make. So I used to make stone mugs.
They're very good. As stone goes, it's one of the best uses of it for trading economically.
Okay.
You make 3 mugs per. Mugs have a decent value, and they're very easy to transport.
Yeah.
And with the current edition of Dwarf Fortress, dwarves actually use them. It used to be that they just grab the barrel and start chugging.
Yeah.
So it'd be a situation where it's like, oh no, I'm low on booze, I gotta make some more. It's like, okay, there's 20 units of booze, and then only one dwarf at a time can use it because they're always picking up the barrel and chugging straight from. Now it's a lot easier, thank goodness.
Oh, yeah, okay. And then I recently just got into making, because I have an abundance of gold in my map, so that's pretty cool. So I've been making
gold so badly.
Gold goblets, and that's actually pretty decent, yeah, for trade and stuff.
Oh, you're actually selling them.
What, should I not sell them?
Like right now, my designs are so big, I could never see myself making and selling anything of any metal aside from maybe zinc and other stuff I get from the trade.
Oh, I don't know. Like, I guess, do you think I'll...
Well,
I don't think I'll run out. But
I anticipate like replacing all the outer walls of my ice fortress with like black bronze, which requires 2 copper, a silver, and a gold. And that's going to be 5 layers high around the entire thing, and then again for the inner ring. So I'm going to need so much gold, I could never see myself giving any of it away.
Okay. Is there, like, I'm just curious, but does Dwarf Fortress, with the trading mechanics, like, usually, like, traders will bring in stacks of bars and whatever.
Yes, and I need them all. Every last one they can bring. I'm buying every non-ridiculously created item. You know, be like, oh hey, this is a copper pick, and then it's like studded with sapphires, you know, and something. So instead of like it being something like a 50, you know, like a dwarf buck pick, it's something like 5,000, you know, dwarf bucks. And like, I'm not buying that, but everything else I'm buying just so I can smelt it down later. If it's metal, I'll buy it off the caravan and smelt it when the time comes.
So I guess in theory, though, you can sell renewable items to the caravans.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, right now, what I just recently did was started segregating my food types. Like I've got a legendary cook who I have just made sure to be appointed Baron. Legendary cook and a legendary leather worker. This lady provides our meals and our clothing for us in opulence. So like, who else is more like deserving of being a baroness, right? But you know, like, about 1/3 of everything she makes is a masterwork roast. Whenever she makes lavish foods, and so I'm taking all these masterwork ones and I'm putting them in a storage zone. Food will rot unless it's in a storage area, so I put it in a storage area that gets dropped. Like I dump it all into one square storage, and I'm locking it all away. But when the traders come by, what I can do is unlock that door and then move all my roasts up. And some of these roasts, like I had a stack of 39, like it was garlic, like roast. Garlic and some other things.
Sounds tasty.
Yeah, like wonderfully minced garlic, lettuce, and like red spinach. And the stack of 39 sold for 8,000 dwarf bucks. It's considered almost exploitative amongst the Foremites.
Okay.
About, you know, like buying out entire caravans with nothing more than a couple roasts. Which is why I get it sequestered away. You know, like if I need to, I have it. If I don't, whatever.
In Dwarf Fortress, can you? I know you can build a tavern.
Yes.
Can you like have like a feast that you invite traders or other diplomats to, and like have a
Not
giant...
yet. Such things are planned when you can do stuff like get people coming in and off the maps in larger groups, like sending out armies. So then you can invite people in.
You can invite like a delegation, or even like just have a wedding and just have like all the relatives.
Oh well, the wedding, you know, sort of thing would have everyone on the map like attending if you got the right.
Oh, can you? Is that a thing now?
Dwarves will marry.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll forego ceremonies, especially if you don't have any places set up.
Okay.
Other times they will like say like, hey, we're having a party over at this spot or in the temple or you know something like that. Tavern is an acceptable choice. Tavern's acceptable choice, I've been told.
And the dwarves will just decide to do that on
They'll
their
go
own?
there, yeah, they'll do it on their own and have a party.
Oh, nice.
There's more stuff planned. Apparently, like the races that you'll see in this, like the histories, like, hey, they had a strength competition. The dwarves will set up and do that sort of stuff on their own, too.
Okay.
Hopefully without incident. Right now, a lot of my dwarves are not properly praying the right way, and they're getting frantic. I must pray to my God. And it's like, you've been there for a month and a half praying to him. It ain't taken, it won't take. Come on, guys. I gotta make a bigger chapel or something, I don't know.
I have had some of my dwarves kind of get in a fist fight with each other.
Oh, yes. That's because they're drunk.
Okay.
Dwarves don't normally get drunk from drinking the booze, but if they're in a tavern and drinking socially, they will.
Oh, okay.
However, this is not necessarily a completely bad thing, as vampires will drink socially when offered in a tavern. And this is the only way that a vampire will drink alcohol, and so if you've got a dwarf and vampire, it's the only way to get alcohol in them to get them back up to speed, because otherwise they will suffer from alcohol withdrawal.
I see. Okay.
The only other way of preventing that would be modding dwarven blood to reset like the feeding time of anyone imbibing it, the same as alcohol would. Which is actually surprisingly easy to do, and would kind of make sense given that dwarves don't naturally drink water in the game. They only drink booze, so shouldn't they have like a lot of like alcohol in their bloodstream? But it's just, like you'd have to hack the system to add that code. This is a nice way of getting around it, albeit requiring that you'd have at least one vampire moving around somewhere, and thus like potentially like drinking like the blood of your regular productive citizens. So issues and making sure it all works out right. So yeah, it's not all bad. That said, some of the fights do proceed up to lethal. It's lethal, non-lethal fights. They're not supposed to get into fights that'll kill each other. But then again, they weren't supposed to fight carp that would kill them. And yet there was a long period of dwarven history where the carps were big enough to actually pose a serious threat to dwarven lives. Yeah.
Well, if you I don't know. I don't always picture my dwarves as D&D dwarves. Sometimes I picture them as like more gnome-sized or 2 feet tall and stuff. I don't know how tall they're supposed to actually be, but I picture them as.
I could check based on their size. Size in Dwarf Fortress is given in like a somewhat odd term of their volume, how much volume they take up. So I could just look at a human, compare it to a dwarf, and then just extrapolate therefrom out.
Okay.
I believe they're about standard dwarven height.
Standard from
3
D&D.
to 4 feet, yeah.
Okay. And Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I think Tolkien is the one who established dwarves as sort of that particular height.
Yeah. Of course, mind you, these dwarves can get pretty skinny depending on what they're doing. So it's not like you got the big old rotund dwarf. If they're doing a lot of hauling, they'll be skinny out. And if they get walking through fire in most editions, they'll just slough off the heat, through melted fat, and just be okay about it.
It's okay.
It's weird.
That's weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I need so much metal. I can't see myself giving out any.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to clear out an entire level just to get the marble out of there to turn I think I'm sitting at 1,500 bars of iron into steel.
You need marble to do that?
I need flux-stone. Marble
Oh, yeah.
counts as one sort of thing that's really easy to find. It's almost a shame because it's a nice white color that really would look nice and clean until the dwarves vomit all over it. It's a thing that happens.
Yes.
Cave sickness, adaptation, and all that, yeah. I've seen some maps where there's just an entire green muddy trail of vomit, and they're about 5 squares wide as it leads to one particular area where all the a caravan got attacked, by goblins, and then oh no, all these goods suddenly spewed out of the caravan, and all the dwarves go out there, and they've been underground for so long they're all vomiting up this horrible massive trail to the looting site, and because it's outdoors, it will never go away.
Yeah. Well, couldn't you build a wall around it temporarily?
Well, you could build roads over top of it, but it won't naturally decompose and just evaporate out. It's a weird quirk of the game that will be fixed eventually.
That also a lot of fixes to this game, but oh well.
To be fair, it used to be worse. A dwarf would wind up walking over something like blood or vomit and track it a few trails next to them.
Yeah.
And then, like, if a couple dwarves do that, like, the pool of blood will, to like a streak of blood and a smattering of blood, and then they would all become pools of blood. So the more the dwarves walk, you'd have like this infinitely creeping mass of blood that was slowly reproducing across wherever they move. And the cleanup chore was so low priority that no one would ever undertake it. So it's just like wherever you go in a dwarven fortress, there's this slowly creeping mat of vomit and blood. It's just like, wow. Thank goodness they at least made sure that didn't spread out anymore. So it could have been worse. But yeah, like I can't see myself ever selling any metal at all. I was saying I won't buy those magnificently appointed picks. I still feel guilty about not doing it though, because it's like, ooh, that's another piece of metal I could have. Ooh, I need it so badly. But that's okay, because I got enough platinum to cover the area I'm going to be putting that'll lead from my future depot to my fortress itself. And so now with some creative digging under walls, I can get my dwarves actually into the proper fortress of where they're going to be.
Okay.
So yay! After 5 years of game time, they can finally move into the real fort instead of this little area they've been at already.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a thing, and like to get it done right. Because the thing is, like, I want to put like the first layer of it down, so that way when they hollow out the area underneath, it remains dark and underground. So that way, like, I won't have like, oh, look at my wonderful passage, and then all my dwarves start moving stuff over to the depot, and they all start vomiting like crazy. Yeah, I don't want that. So I'm not going to do it. Hooray. The tavern might be another issue, but whatever. It'll be a tavern for outsiders as well. If they don't like it, they don't have to stay. But yeah, that's been my big thing in online gaming. What I've really been doing this week is reading. Ravenloft. Again. I started reading The Curse of Strahd, and something clicked with me on that one. So I went looking to find the adventure I had planned for the domain of Tempest, and I can't find it. I'm still looking. I haven't given up hope, but I'm still looking. I can't find the file that I had all my notes on, which is a dang shame if I wound up losing it. But when I lost it, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to look up all the sources I can find. I'm going to get this right when I do it right. Oh, hey, a good description of Tempest can be found in the Ravenloft Gazetteer Volume 5. Don't ask how. Found a copy of it, and I read it, and it really did highlight what it was like to be there in a way that I had not been able to picture before from my other sources. So there are sites, it's like, oh, instead of this happening where I thought it could happen at this site, which is very much a Tempest sort of location, and it would actually fit the setting better and as well as tell the story. And I can move it from this one town to, like, over to here. This would work out a little bit better here. I can make this go there. And it all winds up working a little bit better than I had before. So I would have had to rewrite scenes and redo this and that. And, I guess I have to do it anyways. So, like, now I can do it better than. So, not a complete loss. Plus, I remember pretty much how everything goes. So, yeah. So, yay, plans back on track. Nice. But I've been reading all sorts of stuff. And the bit that clicked with me was actually the foreword they have in Curse of Strahd by Tracy Hickman. And it starts, we turned the corner, and there was a vampire. I groaned and rolled my eyes. It was 1978, and I was playing in one of my first dungeon adventures. It was being run by a friend I had known in high school, John Scott Clegg, and it was typical of the type of adventure that people played in those days. It was all about exploring a hodgepodge collection of rooms connected by dungeon corridors, beating up the monsters that we encountered, searching for treasure, and gaining experience points. Now we were face to face with a random encounter number 34, a vampire. Not a vampire with a capital V, a so many hit die with such and such an armor class lowercase vampire, just another monster in the dungeon. I remember thinking at the time, what are you doing here? This creature seemed completely out of place with kobolds, orcs, and gelatinous cubes that we'd seen thus far. This was a creature who deserved his own setting and to be so much more than just a wandering monster. When I came home from the game, I told these thoughts to Laura. that was when Strad von Zarevich was born. And that bit really highlights what, like, I've been mentioned to you before, Josh. I love Ravenloft. It really rings to me. It calls to me and it beckons.
Yeah.
And I've tried to explain to you before what it is about it that the other settings just haven't done for me. And I think this encapsulates one of the key bits for me that I had not been able to properly espouse before. Ravenloft is a campaign where the monsters have a place. And it's not a room in a dungeon. A vampire, they have an entire like a domain set up around the vampire. So it's not just a monster, it's a person. The werewolves are the same. The creatures, the monsters, they've got places set out for them. So it's not just like, oh, here's a like a campaign realm, like a welcome to the Sea of Fallen Stars just off the coast of like a such and such a land in the Forgotten Realms, and oh yeah, here there are monsters here and there are monsters there. No, it's not as though there are monsters populating it. It's that the monsters are people in it. They have like I'd say almost equal footing, but in many cases they seem to have a greater footing than the humans of the land.
Okay.
That they share with. It's very much their place as much as anyone else's, as opposed to like, yeah, we just like kind of went into their homes, killed them, and took their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We are the murder hobos of the Adventurers Guild. And so that's one of the things that really gets me. And does that sound like a better thing for you then, Josh? That there's like a campaign setting out there where the monsters have a place for them? Even if it might not be a place they particularly enjoy because of like how the things go.
It sounds cool, yeah.
It was weird though, because like with the monster manual you look at in 5th edition, it's really about setting up as like encounters and how like you tell a story.
Yeah.
And so the monsters will have their place. But when I started, as was the case with Tracy Hickman, that wasn't always how you had your adventures. It was like monster, 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 loot, monster, 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 loot, monster, monster, boss, monster, end of adventure, all the loot. And that's kind of how it went. Kind of like playing with some of the older video games, which is weird because you'd think in the realm of pen and paper, where you could say what's going on, you would be free of these confines of what like the older video games could and couldn't do. Mm-hmm. And yet we fall into the trap once again. It seems time and again of making it just like, oh yeah, you move here, you do it. Like, you don't see the adventure, you see like the game stats, you see the game and not the story.
Yeah, that's a very hard thing. You can get in that rut, I suppose, both as a DM and as a player group or a group of players, because you can, as a players, you can sort of tunnel vision yourself into just next fight, even if the DM is trying to give you story details. Often, like, a group will be like, we're just fighting the monsters, like, just want to roll the dice.
Which is why things will inevitably wind up going wrong for you in Ravenloft. Many of the monsters are changed based on location. I was just reading about the city of Timor. I had only really gotten a chance to see it in some of the later stuff, but I was reading the Islands of Terror adventure, book and all that. And this was the original presentation of it, and it's this wonderful city, stuff. And it looks great, but it's pretty much emptied out of people because they've been preyed upon by monsters. Mm-hmm. Monsters that seem intent on doing very little more than slaughtering them in mercilessly horrible ways. Not even eating the corpses afterwards, but just just eviscerating and just leaving it for other people to see.
So what sort of monsters? Like ghouls?
In this case, it's actually two groups of monsters: doppelgangers and Malekith. The Malekith are something. Picture the drow. If no one told you how to make a drow to begin with. You got, like, 4 arms, 4 legs, spidery, kind of humanoid sort of thing, really nasty.
Okay.
They're pretty much exclusive to that domain, although they can branch out elsewhere if the hive queen allows the other queen eggs to ever survive. All the monsters in Timor, as it turns out, spoiler alert, whatever, all the monsters in, there have been changed. They don't feed on food. They feed on fear. Mm. So every time they eviscerate somebody and leave it out for other people to see, they're making sure they're trying to get the most fear out of the people so they get more food out of them. Mm-hmm. if it was just a matter of scaring the bejesus out of them to feed from them, they would. But they get the best fear out of hunting them, the best fear out of like leaving these terror-induced sites in the streets for the other people to find the next day. It's very good that way. And so what you would expect from like, oh, why are these monsters doing this? I have to find a motivation. It can't be because they need sustenance. They're just like leaving the body behind. And it's not a physical sustenance for them anymore. It's a psychic sustenance now.
Although that reminds me of Monsters, Inc., and I wonder, too, if Monsters, Inc. wasn't sort of a more civilized version of sort of that domain.
Well, the doppelgangers, if done right, and I have to say, I am very sad, about the state of doppelgangers throughout most of the history of Dungeons & Dragons. You've got a person that can look like anyone, and yet you still have them acting like a brute monster. I'm going to walk in, I'm going to kill things. It's like, no, man. Take over a person's role, subsume their life, and then just, make sure it's a good life, and then just live a life of luxury, man. Like why are you killing after that? If you're a good doppelganger, you only need to kill once. And, like you've got moral stipulations about that, because doppelgangers are mostly neutral, not like evil, right?
Yeah.
Find someone who dies unexpectedly, then hide the body and take over their life. So you could just have them be that sort of thing that winds up, like taking over life without actually killing them in the nefarious evil way. This could be a thing that actually, it's not a good act, but not an evil act to like take over someone's life. You could even see it as a merciful act. Like, this is a good man who lived a good life. He was well loved by his like wife and his children. So instead, instead of them mourning his loss, I shall hide his body, take over his life, and they will never know that he died in such a horrible fashion, such an untimely fashion. I will be the legacy of him, and they will never know it.
I'd like to see like a doppelganger, like Universal style movie with like the Invisible Man or the Mummy or whatever. Call it The Doppelganger, and it's about a man, maybe through a science accident or something like that, loses his physical form, but he can only now take the form of people that he sees, like
or touches,
or touches or sees.
So we get the brute hand on the back. Ah.
Yeah, and then he see like sort of it'd
so
be a
you'd
psychological.
only meet the person of who he is in like the first act. Thereafter, you get a person in like a body stocking and some makeup. And then whoever else is, like he's portraying plays the character.
Yeah, it would be an interesting thing for an ensemble of actors, because each actor would have to play the same character.
Yeah. Who is playing the other characters? It's very, very.
I think it'd be a fun idea.
I think it could have really succeeded, especially back in the day. There'd have to be some nice CGI stuff going on to show the transformation now.
Yeah, probably.
That's the thing. Like,
I mean, Mystique in the X-Men has that power.
Yeah.
So it's not like it hasn't been done, but I'd like to see just a movie very much focused on just that person and what it would mean.
Stealing your face.
What would? Yeah, and well, I mean, there's Face Off, or what's that movie?
Yeah, Face Off.
Face Off.
That's really where they surgically switch faces and ignore the height and like bone structure differences.
Yeah,
that come
I think
on.
so. Yeah.
And
there's Being John Malkovich.
Yeah, which is, well, that's kind of like a psychic possession in that case, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, like this is Ravenloft is a place where like the monsters can be different depending on where you are to suit the style of how things go.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. You different versions of vampires.
So if you expect, oh, this is a vampire, or this is a werewolf sort of thing. I'll, get something like a wolfsbane and show it there. No, and silver's not going to work against it. Not in all editions. Like back in second edition, each, were creature had a specific bane, which was, like a sprig or something like that, and a specific material they were, vulnerable against. So if you were, for instance, a were tiger, you wouldn't have to worry about silver item, like that. However, obsidian, that's going to hurt you, and proceed on for each different one. So that way, if it's like, oh, we got to fight like a were creature, okay, get a silver weapon, and then all of a sudden you find yourself stabbing the were tiger over and over and over again, and why isn't it working? It's a silver weapon, as it just decides to eviscerate you on its attack round because you did nothing to damage it, and now it's just cheesed off at you trying to. You messed up his wonderful, outfit they use in there. It's like because he's a civilized were-tiger. Come on.
Okay.
And that's the sort of thing. It's like this, just like hack and slash, like horse blinders mentality is going to get you killed in Ravenloft. Because heck, it's in Ravenloft, even if you kill it, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay down. Some of these things come back,
Sure, yeah.
Ghosts, predominantly, Dark Lords. Sometimes they're not easy to kill. But the other bit that really got me was marks of horror being noted in here. A gust of air, like the foul-smelling breath of some horrible monster, greets the adventurers as they climb the steps of a tower in Castle Ravenloft. Nearing the top, they begin to hear the beating of a heart in the darkness above. Not a human heart, but the heart of something monstrous and horrible. Such is the nature of Gothic horror, fear bred by anticipation and the dark realization that all will be truly and horribly revealed in time. And so they've got tips to help make sure that, you get the adventure, get the best experience out of it. And I thought for our topic this week, we'd be discussing these bits and deciding how well they work for horror, for any campaign, or whether or not you'd think that this would work as a default or just a sometimes sort of thing,
Okay.
All right, so the first bit is the unknown. Horror is born out of a fear of the unknown. Our fear is heightened when the darkness engulfs us and we can't see, or when the truth is behind a locked door covered by a sheet or buried in the soft earth. It's not the monster, but its shadow that breeds horror. The more we know about a monster, the less we fear it. So the trick is to keep it out of the light for as long as possible. I think good examples of this were, as we said earlier, it was knowing a monster, so many hit dice with so many vulnerabilities and strengths and all that stuff to watch out for. It's a troll, break out the acid flasks and fireball spells. You don't fear a troll if you know what regeneration is vulnerable against.
Okay.
So it's 2 tricks to heighten the fear of the unknown, as they show. I think actually a good real world example for the fear of the unknown would be the movie Jaws. How Steven Spielberg kept the actual shark Jaws off screen as often as possible to heighten its impact.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
That and the shark wasn't looking very realistic, so conservation, right? The more screen time it had, the more potential chance of seeing that it's fake would be, so don't show it too often.
Yeah, well, and this is why on Shark Week they show a lot of shark footage, and because the idea, nowadays, we don't want to villainize the sharks. We want to say they're part of nature, respect them, and stuff like that. So they have a lot of shark footage.
Demystify the shark.
It's here's a creature that's part of nature, and you can swim around with it or whatever.
Provided it's not too hungry.
Yeah,
it's a shark. It's how it goes. It's a wild creature. But yeah, some tips. When it seems as though the characters have everything under control, you can have a gust of wind suddenly blow at their torches, plunging them into darkness. That's not a big bad thing, is it?
Well, a natural wind probably shouldn't blow out a torch, but yeah, if there's something supernatural or
it
weird.
doesn't even necessarily need to be supernatural. It's just something to keep everyone on their toes. It's nothing much more than okay, we relight the torch and all that sort of thing. It's just that what was that? Keep them on their guard, keep them from getting too complacent. Because when it seems like they're under control, that's when they have the least amount to fear.
I like this idea, especially as a DM, because it keeps your players in the skin of their characters. Keeps them if you throw something at them a little discomfort, or now your socks are wet. What are you going to do about your wet socks? Yeah. Are you just going to walk around with your wet socks?
They're squelching in your boots every step you take. Yeah. They're already going numb at the toes. You feel it's miserable. I remember one campaign of yours where we decided not to even go out in the winter. We decided to wait till spring.
Yeah.
Because winter is a miserable time normally, and there's no way I want to go camping in it. So let's stay at home for the winter. Fireplaces. It's wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
In which case, that would be a perfect time to force us out of it and make it be something that had to happen.
Yeah, a DM could do that. Yeah.
You were merciful, though.
Well, I also I didn't want to. I wasn't interested in. I guess I could have run a few Blizzard encounters, but I wanted to run more monster fights and less actual just rolling for endurance,
random
and
weather,
rolling
and
for
just like it's miserable.
so you don't get hypothermia. That at the time that didn't interest me. Although I can see like that being a fun, I don't know,
Brave the wilderness.
campaign.
Man versus nature is always a good one when everyone's up for it. But I was playing a skinny little elven wizard who did not like the cold. So yes, even though I had magical spells that probably could have kept me warm, I stayed inside for the winter.
Yeah.
Fireplace and some nice elven wine.
So I guess, part of it is just the DM's, preference. Like, as a DM, I could have thrown you into that.
You could have made it a very
cold
vicious
adventure.
winter. Things could have come to us.
Yeah.
Where we'd have to venture out into at least the streets and, go in the slush and the muck at the side of the roads.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have.
You were
I
merciful, though, because it was
didn't
not
feel
a
like
horror-based campaign. At least not at that point.
Yeah, it's supposed to be more of an adventure and exciting exploration, stuff like that.
If I
meeting
didn't want to
new
explore
characters.
deep in snow, then so be it.
Yeah.
Everyone else was on board with that one, so it's not like it was a big party split sort of thing going on there.
Because as a DM, I would prefer to roleplay as the sort of the king of the sprites rather than just a generic blizzard. That's sort of where I prefer to.
What does the king of the sprites do during the winter months? Oh,
well,
I do kind of want to go adventuring in the winter.
Or
at least maybe ask them in the spring. So what did you guys do for the last 4 months?
Hibernated, I guess. I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, that's the difference between marking a horror-based campaign and I guess more adventure-based one. Was it's okay in a regular adventure to let the heroes get complacent, to let them think they've got things under control, especially if they really do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good way of making sure you mark the horror in that case. That's a good one, even if there's little things to keep them off their guard, so they're never at 100%. Before a monster appears, take a moment to describe the odor that precedes it, the eerie sound it makes, or the weird shadow it casts.
Yeah, smells are often forgotten. Indeed, I always forget to do smells, but when I do use smells, players always
they're always on top.
They
I have
react
noticed
to
that
it.
myself.
Which
is why I think it's always good to have a gnome in the party, just to keep everyone remembering about their fine sense of smell.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they had scent ability back in 3rd edition. It was basically scent.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, real good sense. I mean, they had bonus to alchemy because of their great sense of smell.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that part. Yeah.
You could even they were even you could give them let them take the feat that would have scent as an ability. There was rules for it in the monster manual for that sort of thing. It wasn't. I don't think anyone ever took it in any campaign I was ever in, but it was always an option.
Okay.
Yeah. Foreshadowing is another one they have here. That kind of segs back into the eerie sound of the parts of the monster. Foreshadowing is about finding clues to a horrible truth yet to be revealed. Consider the following examples. Before characters encounter a monster, hint at the monster's presence with clues such as claw marks, gnawed bones, and blood stains. I believe this is good, not just because it shows bones, blood stains, and signs of violence behind on this sort of thing. It's just not bad for most sort of things, but there are some areas where you don't want to have this sort of thing, and so a nice opulent mansion with some blood stains here and there out of place really heighten it.
Yeah. Well, and players always assume if there's blood stains. Whenever I say, oh, and there's bloodstains, the players always, they're oh, that means something. They're always thinking this. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's been a rather dry winter, and I suffer from rather bloody noses in these dry conditions.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know how much bloody a nose will stain. The other thing about that is I don't think I've ever actually had... Or I very rarely have encounters happen where there isn't some indication beforehand. Usually they hear something, they see some sign. Pretty much all the time I give away that the players are going to encounter a monster.
Unless the creature's a smart creature sort of thing that hides this sort of stuff. Especially for a monster in an urban setting.
You can, yeah.
It would not do to have a bunch of gnarled bones, and just all chewed up on the front lawn. That's just even the half-orcs don't do that.
Well, for one thing, the last time I ran an urban setting was I tried to do Patalis, Monty Cook's mega city adventure. I didn't get very far. I ran a few sessions of that, and I don't really. Urban adventures are not really my thing, I don't think.
It has not been your forte yet. You have yet to find the thing that makes it all click together with you.
Yeah, pretty much. I like the dungeons. I like the dragons. I like dungeons. I like outdoors.
The wilderness of it.
The towns, I just feel like it's narrative space.
Fair enough. Not every monster has to be an urban one, and there's a lot of good things to be done in ruins and else.
Yeah. But yeah, like I really, I mean, I know it's an option to have a creature sort of ambush the players or come out of nowhere, but I almost never do that anymore.
Well, like some monsters more than others work well for that. As I described in Timor, like the Americas, they're almost like when you're in the sewers, they're almost kind of like the aliens from the Alien series.
Mm-hmm.
They'll hide in spots like here and there, and they'll like crawl slowly along the ceiling to get the drop on you, because they want to scare the bejesus out of you, because that's kind of their sustenance, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Described.
Yeah.
So in which case, monsters popping out is very much a thing. I mean, the citizens of Timor were like, when things first started going bad, like they were remarking about like, oh yes, that's right, I saw someone talking to their brother in the park, and all of a sudden their brother turned into a horrible monster and started like slashing and clawing at their chest. Just to heighten the amount of fear going on there. So I think that's what they were doing. But oh my gosh, I mean, like, does that put them on everyone's edge? Because you can't even trust like family members, relatives, and all that sort of stuff.
Another thing about that, about seeing details and stuff, is you can take a cue from your players depending on how they're role playing their characters. If they are especially vigilant and they're saying, well, I'm watching out for this and that, and they're asking questions.
If a barbarian's knocking down doors, don't describe what he sees, man. He ain't got time for that. He's busy cracking wood.
That's right. It's all about perspective, and it's all about what the players are paying attention to. So if they're not, if they're not interested in all this extra detail, you don't have to give it to them. And so, yeah, you take it's an art, the art of dungeon mastering. You take your cues from the players.
I think foreshadowing was done very well in the original Resident Evil movie. It's actually not movie. It was done well in the movie, but I think it was done even better in the original game, because that's the one that really starts popping in for foreshadowing, is to like, what the heck is going on in this mansion, and there's little clues here, like parts of like a document, saying like, I did this here, like bits of like a diary from a person there, and little clues that lead that something bad has happened here. What has happened here as you investigate the mystery. So yes, it says claw marks, gnarled bones, and blood stains and all that. Doesn't have to be. Sometimes it can be clues as to tell the story as to what's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Especially if the truth to be revealed is something horrific and monstrous in itself.
Yeah. I'll just ask too. Like sometimes we talked about the pearl, the giant pearl that you found.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can have just a treasure, like the characters just come across like a dead adventurer who randomly died, like trying to, like maybe he fell when he was trying to climb something. And
yes, I believe one of the bits in the back, they've got like a side adventure. Yeah. You can also find it as a PDF online. They got for first level adventures to kind of get you in the mood and the setting for Ravenloft.
Okay. Yeah.
And one of the things there is it's no creature, no monster or anything, but you do find someone who has not met the best of ends in the house they're at.
Yeah, and like you might find a treasure with them or something.
Yeah,
like
there's stuff that helps reveal as well as what could be considered treasure.
Yeah.
That said, I do have an issue with the adventure portraying people as skeletons. It's like, when you encounter it's a skeleton, like it's all that remains of the previous adventure that was in here. That almost never happens.
Usually it's a mummified.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to do a horror story out there, our listeners, by all means, less skeletons, more mummified corpses.
Ooh.
It will make things at least seem a little bit different, even if they're not, like they don't animate or anything. They're just mummified corpses. It does seem to make it a little bit more realistic on that.
Right.
If you find a skeleton then that means something would have had to have eaten the pieces.
Well, it could be just rats or bugs, right?
Yeah, rats, bugs could work, but in many cases, even that, doesn't happen.
I guess because flesh wouldn't be great to eat.
Rats only like rancidity to a certain point.
Yeah.
So yeah, you need it to be in some sort of like wilderness setting for skeletonization to occur.
Right.
If it's even in a dungeon or in a person's house, mummification is more likely to occur. So try and make sure you get it right. It will pay off, especially to the people that know the difference. It seems less like a props bought at a Halloween dollar store.
Mm-hmm.
The other foreshadowing is whenever a character takes a long rest, give one of them a prophetic dream in which he or she glimpses something yet to be found or encountered. That's a little overdone and a bit hackneyed in this case. I suppose you could do something like a creature silhouetted against the moon if you're going to fight like a werewolf. That said, I would not do it that way. We'll say with a werewolf sort of thing, I would make them have dreams of them being in like the woods at night, with only the full moon to illuminate them as they're running from something that's hunting them down.
Mm-hmm.
Never state what's hunting them, but make sure you really hype up the sense of panic and the need to run from whatever it is that's coming bearing down upon them. That way you do get the foreshadowing and makes the creatures seem much more menacing without having to do it. Although that said, prophetic dreams are a bit of an overdone trope. They have to get done just right to make it work. Your opinion on that?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm not the biggest fan of prophetic dreams. Also, again, I would like to take cues from player characters. Like if a player of mine, sometimes they'll write into their character's backstory. They're like, well, my character is maybe not a psychic per se, but is somewhat more sensitive
to these.
So if the player kind of gives you that information that they're kind of looking for that, then you can go ahead and run with it and say, feed them those dreams because they want those. But often, players don't necessarily, they feel like it's a bit of an intrusion when the DM is saying, well, you have a dream about this. Well, that's
don't
my
tell me
character.
What I'm dreaming about.
Yeah.
How dare you?
So,
my head. I'll work it in a different way. What if the players encounter a journal? But it's not just a regular journal where it says stuff there. It's in code, and they gotta break the code or translate. Maybe it's just like a foreign language, and so they're able to translate, but not all at once. It takes some time. So whenever they go for their long rest, one of them can be assumed to be working on the translation. In which case you can provide a little bit more of the story as it goes on, as they're able to translate during their downtime.
Yeah.
Does that sound better to you?
It does. Well, I wouldn't necessarily impose that on them, but I would give them that.
Provided they
book.
Pick it up and take the book with them, I assume they're interested.
Yeah, and if they're interested, and if they say specifically, if they ask me, well,
what's in this
have
book?
have I decoded it yet? Then I can say, well, okay,
you're working on
you
it.
got this more details.
This is what you get throughout the course of your evening's rest and relaxation.
And it looks like there's more to discover if you try again tomorrow or something.
Well, there's still more pages to go. This is just what you're able to do, while you were eating your iron rations.
Yeah. Although there is also, with D&D, a player might just decide, well, rather than, trying to, piece through it and stuff like that, I'll just, next time I level up, I'll just take the skill point for the language, which I would probably allow. But, then they just know that language now. If it's important enough,
you
spend a whole skill point.
In 5th edition, for your skill, you could just wind up spending 250 days to learn the language, right? Spend the money, take the time. That said, this would be something like, you can get the language sort of thing. It's, I'll take Tepestani language. It's actually cobbled together from 2 other languages for their alphabets.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally in the process of being created in the modern time.
Mm-hmm.
They've spoken the language since whenever, but it hasn't had a written history. And so, there's bits about, if you know this one language and this one other language, this would be back in 3rd edition, you can decipher it with, a DC 12 check, If you only know one of the languages, it's DC 18. So I could say, in this case, if you have, someone's Tepestani, a journal, an Inquisitor's log, and you're like an outsider and you want to figure out what the heck was going on, something happened to the Inquisitor. You've got his book now. They usually don't let that stuff out. And so, yeah, it's going to take you time. This is not exactly a language you're familiar with. Things are working kind of weird here in Skronky for, how it all, translates for, the grammar and all that. So, yeah, it'll take you a bit. As you're going about your adventure, you get a little bit more every day.
That's cool. Yeah, that works. I wanted to mention one other thing I've always wanted to try, but I haven't run a campaign like this yet, is I did want to run a campaign that goes into the dream plane, the plane of dreams, or the dream realm, and then at some point do each character's, dreamscape, and have, a dungeon or a series of a few rooms. I don't know how much time actually spent, but each character have, enter their mind, and the party, gets to do that in another character's mind. I never figured out exactly how to do it, though.
I suppose you could do a small spell, just as people are falling asleep, that if they dream, they will all have a shared dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that.
So yeah, spell or psychic power both work very well, I think, for 3rd edition mechanics. That way when they dream, they all dream as one. So you could have a collective one, or you could have it so be that one person is dominant. So you have you cast on one person and then so many other people within so many feet of it. I think it's within 20 feet you can get so many people, sort of thing, as a standard spell radius.
Mm-hmm.
So if you all crash together in the same common room, sort of thing, and you cast it on, hit that guy's forehead, it's his dreamscape this time around.
Yeah.
I think that would work very well. Especially if you've got something on the other side of the dream realm trying to partake information or help on out. A creature from the dream realm has escaped to the mortal realm. You have to hunt him down, and this is only through the dream realm can you gain clues as to where it's gone and what it's been doing to follow it down.
Yeah.
I think that could work very well, both in a regular style adventure and especially very well in Ravenloft.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah. So hooray! I think that works quite nice.
Yeah, since you mentioned dreams.
Yeah. Age is another example. Barovia is the grim reflection of its undead master. Almost everything here is old and time-worn. Everywhere the adventurers go, they should be reminded of death, decay, and their own mortality. Here's a few... this is something that's more Barovian-related, but I think should work well for everything in Ravenloft. If you're in a realm, it should reflect the master. It should be a reflection of the Dread Lord who, is the source of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that it should always be a thing, but it doesn't seem like it always works for some realms, some more than others.
Okay.
But yeah, some examples here. Take time to describe the rotting timbers of buildings, the faded and moth-eaten clothing on the Barovian peasantry, the worm-ridden pages of old books, and the rust on iron fences and gates. I think this just goes well to establishing the setting as it is. If the players are just kicking down doors, again, skip on that sort of stuff. But you really want it to feel like a place. You really want it to be its own, how can you tell this is Barovia as opposed to, generic, Eastern Romanian land number 14? In which case, Barovia is age. It is decay. It's the vampire, Strahd is hundreds of years old, and everything around it should feel as old as he is.
Well, that's weird, because I think sort of real life, you can look at sort of Romania, for example, or...
it's not rotting and old and anything by any means, no.
Not necessarily, but if you go there, you will find, old stuff. You'll find a lot of,
castles...
Yeah, and just even general, you'll find a farm that's, the farmhouse is kind of fallen down or whatever, or...
You don't even need to do that. I mean, the hill I grew up on, you could just go up to the top of the hill and there was an old farm from, the turn of the century.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was a horse farm, but there seems to be some apple trees going on there. I was never able to find a lot of detail on it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was collapsed buildings here and there, a chicken coop that had... The roof was still on there, but the entire floor of it had been taken over by bramble bushes. Turns out chicken manure makes really good fertilizer for that stuff. So the entire bottom half of the entire building for the chicken coop was just like full of these brambles. There'd be like a few places where there'd be just the basement remaining, where they dug into like the side of the place to have a cool room to store their stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't need to go all the way to Romania to find at least some hints of age.
Yeah, and I think those are cool to just throw into your D&D campaign. I wonder, like, if you have a very densely populated land.
Some places are just, urban clusters. So
I wonder, you might find sort of less of those or more of those being repurposed or, changed around or somebody cleared it out.
I think New York is a great example of this for real world.
Uh-huh.
I described it before, but as I was like going through Google Street View, I was struck at just the age of this city, the layers it had on it. Like I found the Ghostbusters, fire hall. It's there. It's still there. It's wonderful and all that. They got a nice thing there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a new building by any stretch.
Hmm.
But the street underneath it is even older. It's still brick showing on there. It's just not like
brick road
paved. Yeah, it's still bricked, road. But you go across the street, and there's a new building going up, like a high-rise, like $1 million per apartment sort of thing, like really swanky high-end. This is a city that has layers of age, something new, something old. There's always old stuff getting fixed. Everywhere I went, I saw, like areas where, you'd walk under, like streets you couldn't walk on because they were fixing up the facade and doing stuff. It was a very busy city. It was a city where a million things were happening, and it really showed on the street view.
I remember also reading about ancient cities and how they would build the new buildings just right on top of the old ones. Like the old ones would fall down, and they didn't clear it out.
They didn't have like building
codes
like at all.
So they just built more and more, higher and higher on top of that. So your roads would be layers of sort of pottery or whatever.
Yeah, there's some stories about the Italian cities, about how, they've got like city 1, which is like the living city, and then they got city 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers, going down, where you'd find like, oh, these coins from the Roman era, like, ooh, we found it. And it's just like that is age. I think Paris reflects it well in a Gothic style setting, because Paris has the catacombs.
Mm-hmm.
They're not well laid out in any grid shape or any formation that could help people out. And they're not fully mapped. You can literally get lost and die in there to this day. It's that old, it's that complex, and it's that, multi-staged. So you can wind up like, oh, and now you're in an area that's, being, the people that were first put in there were put in there like over 1,000 years ago. So yeah, for like a nice dungeon setting, Paris and its catacombs are just, say, magnifique.
One other thing I'm remembering from H.P. Lovecraft's writing is he writes about these old houses that, this house used to be by itself on a hill. It was kind of creepy. And then he writes about sort of
the
how...
rats in the walls is the one you're talking about, isn't it?
Well, a lane was dug beside the house, and then now the basement opens up, so now that they built a new door there.
And then they find, the ways down, and there's like a cavern underneath. And it's like, oh no, my ancestors used to eat people. Now I must go insane!
Yeah.
Because that's just kind of how Lovecraft wrote. It's a little crazy, a little wacky, but decently well done. We all love him for it.
So, yeah, if you want examples of that, I suppose Lovecraft, among many other fine writers, but yes.
Yeah, his stuff is very easy to find, thanks to it somehow lapsing into public domain. Somehow, don't know how. Someone misplaced a piece of paper or burned it.
Oh, really? Oh.
The people from the Arkham, estate, for the whole group that had the rights, says they renewed it. No one can find the paperwork.
Really?
Wonder how that one happened. Ain't that interesting? Kicker out. But age for Barovia, I think, is a nice one to show its master. A character gazing into a mirror, a pool, or other reflective surface might glimpse an older, more decrepit version of him or herself. Just for a second, it looks, it could just be, you look in there, it's like, it's just so darn dusty on the mirror that you look over and you catch it. It looks like you're, just for a second, like you're in your 60s there, Josh. Ooh.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sometimes you look in the mirror and you notice, like something you don't like about your face, or you're like, oh, you know.
Are you kidding? I look over and it's like, oh, look at that slight graying in the hair. God dang, that's going to look great. And I get a couple more pieces there.
I will say, I generally, I don't have a problem with my own
Sometimes
looks.
I'm not happy with how the hair falls on me. But by and large, I never catch a look in the mirror and say, like, oh, what's up with that ugly bugger there? Ooh. At least not yet.
You haven't had that yet. Okay.
Fingers crossed, this is still a ways down. But I do see people catch a secondary glance on that sort of thing. So I think for Barovia, age is a great way of showing like a reflection of its master. Like a vampire might be able to last several hundred years and still look as good as ever, but the things that are aging around him won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why you have like Strahd in this like weather-beaten old castle with it's not well upkept. And not just because it's really hard to find good staff these days, in this haunted castle.
Okay.
It's because it's a reflection of who he is. And I think that's rather good. There are a few other areas, but I have noticed that we have gone over our hour-and-a-half limit for this week.
Yeah.
So we are going to have to mark this as a two-parter and keep going.
Sure.
Next
Yeah.
week.
We'll do it.
I think it's rather good areas for improving both storytelling, novel writing, as well as just thinking, like as a player, just to read this is just to consider these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm on my guard, that's the best time to knock me off at least a little bit. You got to figure out like if you want to argue it as a point against the dungeon master sort of thing. It's you always have to try and be on your guard. Like, this is a campaign setting where you really shouldn't be off your guard at all at any point in time. A little paranoia pays off, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of being on your guard, I want to be... You can do that. You can knock players off their guard and give them a little disadvantage. But also at the same time, maybe throw, like, less challenging encounters during those, like, less challenging fights. So, like, a fight with, like, a rat or, something... maybe a lone zombie
ghoul.
or a lone ghoul actually becomes a little bit more challenging, even though it's probably not really much of a threat. But
if
because
the light blows out. Oh,
yeah, something else goes on, and then that makes it
more... Or at least, keep in mind who's got the torch. If it's like the fighter who's got the torch and he's got like a sword in the other hand, you want to describe like the flickering shadows as he moves around and how everything, like the shadows seem to be jumping around as you go about your fight. Just to keep them a little more on their guard against, like, maybe it's not just a ghoul, maybe there are actual shadows here.
Well, that's an interesting that you brought. Maybe this for another time. I'll try and do this really quickly. But what I find in games oftentimes, though, is that the question of who's carrying the torch and who's got the light often gets a little bit tedious, and we sort of, as a group, kind of, the first time we do it, we're like, okay, he's got the torch and he's got dark vision and this and that and this and that. But after the second or third encounter, often I find we just sort of all mutually forget about it, and we just sort of
but all the more good reason to make sure they're on their toes. Why is it important to have the light? Who's got the light? What happens if something goes out? Who can get it back up again?
Yeah, you're right.
Do you have like the dwarf, automatically go to the outside of like the group party and like watch down the hall to make certain nothing comes while they're enshrouded in darkness?
Yeah. But also the other thing is it leads to, well, I guess as a DM this is fine. Yeah. It leads to things like wasted turns, like you can't, like, I want to attack, I want to do something. Well, you can't do that if you can't see, and so you're going to have to spend your turn picking up
you're doing it blind.
Yeah. Or you could take your turn to light the torch and next turn.
That was one of the things about Timor, is they said to do that with not just the mundane stuff, but also the magical lights. Is have the magical lights wink out, like the darkness itself is actively like upset at you bringing light down there. And thus, to help make sure that it's not just like, don't worry, man. I've got the light cantrip. Pop that on there, and now we're good. Doesn't matter. Like, I'll pop a light on your head, pop a light on this guy's head, pop a light on the sword. Woo! Has all sorts of fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's kind of interesting because magic can be like, it's arcane magic, so you can throw a little like spontaneity, a little bit of weirdness into there without being too without having to explain yourself too much, because you can just say, well, you can roll your spellcraft check, and the character's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll roll my. Why is my light spell acting up? I roll my spellcraft check, and I say, well, there's sort of spiritual forces in the area.
What's the thing in the sewers beneath Tamor? Like, no light goes more than 15 feet. So you can have sunburst. It's like, yeah, good, 15 feet radius. It's not going further than that. The darkness is like it's actively repelling your light. Your light is an affront to its sanctimonious darkness. Mm-hmm. With the blessing that actually hides the creatures within it. It's like you might see it as being something dangerous, but you could phrase it as though it was being a blessing. It doesn't want you to see what's in there because you're better off not knowing what it looks like. Mm-hmm. You're actually less afraid fighting blind in the darkness than to see what it is. Mm. So, things to ponder. I think that's a nice little parting note, is to think of it from all aspects: player, dungeon master, storyteller. Some people are just going to write a novel about this sort of stuff.
Sure. I just want to remind our listeners, though, if they have comments, send email to thesimulationist@gmail.com. Comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thesimulationist, youtube.com/thesimulationist, and me on Twitter @Josh_Trelaffin, TRESLAFFIN is my Twitter handle. And support us on Patreon, and I think that's all. Write reviews on iTunes, and share us with friends in real life, because that would help us out a lot.
The aspiring horror writer, the guy who's planning on running a Ravenloft adventure, especially link this one up to them, man. If it's relevant, let them know.
That's right. You can talk about us or with us on various web forums, including, I think, Reddit.com. Never mind, Reddit.
Yeah.
Find us on Reddit, or share a link or wherever you think it might fit. This one, where did we go? We went to Dwarf Fortress a lot on this one. Maybe I'll put a link on
What's the one thing I've
Fortress
noticed about Dwarf
subreddit.
Fortress? It might be dark underground, but no one ever seems to care about whether or not there's a torch with the dwarves. Everyone can maneuver around, and everyone sees perfectly well. That will change. It's going to get nasty. It's going to get dark. You're just going to have to be lights.
Well, I like that dwarves can kind of see in the dark, but maybe
there's already stuff set up for that. But
okay.
If you've got an elf or a human in the area, the human diplomat has come on in, and it's like he's not going down into there. He can't see at all.
Yeah.
So if he's there, it's effectively like he's blinded with his condition. He's slowly groping around in the darkness unless you provide lit areas for him to enjoy.
Yeah, that would be cool things just to be able to build, like a sconce or a brazier or
I won't lie,
fireplace.
an artifact candelabra or chandelier would be pretty nice, at least as a change of pace.
Yeah.
I'm tired of these little nothings I'm getting for artifacts.
Plus, what is that? Gimli has that line in The Lord of the Rings about the roaring fires of Moria. Over there, yeah.
Part forge fire, I imagine. Part, regular hearth fire.
Yeah.
Dwarven utility and all that.
Okay.
All right. I think that's been a pretty good one, and it's only half of it.
Yeah, we'll do more of the same stuff next week.
More discussions as to great things to improve your storytelling.
All right. Well, I've been Josh Trelaffin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.
Good night.